going forward. We are continuing to do mural restorations. One of our challenges currently is a lift. So if anybody has a lift that they'd like to offer, that would be very cool. The Iron Horse Gym mural there on the side of the building has been redone about till halfway up, and it's about as high as we can go right now. So in any case, that's hopefully some of the funding that we can get. We haven't received our CAC grant for the year. As I mentioned in our letter, CAC has received an additional $5 million, but it's a one-time sort of, addition to their kitty. We don't know that that's going to be something that's been sustained, but, in the past, I think 11 years now, they've gone from a $30 million budget to a $1 million budget. And per capita, they actually spend more money per capita in places like North Dakota and Kansas and Missouri, and not that those are any, lesser states than California, but being, where we have Pixar and all of the movie houses, you think that, we should be securing some more dollars statewide and from the NEA, from the National Endowment for the Arts, for arts in California. That's not the case. So a lot of our agencies are turning to local governments and grant opportunities to secure funding. So we would just like for you to consider all those details. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxanna. Any questions for Roxanna? Council, any?
Make a motion to approve the donation of $2,000 to Alaska County Arts Council.
Have a first? And a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Mr. Hancock, 9G.
Good evening. We have received a request for a fee waiver for use of the Riverside Park. We have considered these fee waivers in the past. This is for a memorial and a fundraiser luncheon in honor of Angel Seiler. And the fee waiver would result in a savings for the applicant of $132 to use the park.
Just one question on the motion on the floor. Is it an actual organization or is it just an individual?
I don't believe they've formed an official organization. And so it's, if they haven't notified us of having a tax exempt status or anything. So it is an individual making the request.
I assume we're okay with okay.
That was just last.
I think it's for the public good. I tell you that a lot, but I think you would agree.
Okay. Motion on the floor, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Hancock, 9H.
This item, due to some unfortunate circumstances, we have a temporary vacancy in our building department, which consists of one person. And because of the number of projects that we have going and the need for continued building inspection services, we have reached out to Mr. Dave Purvis to provide temporary building official services. The contract has been made available. This was also reviewed in closed session and approved by the City Council, but we have it before you to consider and hopefully reapprove in open session.
Mr. Hancock, council. Any questions for Mr. Hancock? I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item 12A.
Good evening. Are you ready? This is this item here. We have was approved at the June 18th meeting. Oh, sorry, at the there's too many dates on this. We originally brought this issue forward on June 18th to the city council, and we waived the first reading and approved on August 6th the attached ordinance. And as the question came up earlier, this is a fairly simple ordinance in that what it does is it changes the definition of smoking to include e-cigarettes as well. And so all of our code sections that relate to smoking, including smoking in the workplace, smoking in and around public buildings, also smoking in city parks. We have a prohibition for smoking in city parks. And also there have been 2 community events that have been designated as non-smoking events. In all of those situations where smoking is prohibited, the definition has now been expanded to include e-cigarettes, so that is also a prohibited activity based on this change.
I'm happy.
Thank you. Laura, would you like to, you good?
I think that's perfect. The state of California's smoking regulations in the workplace law are labor code. It's a labor code 64.4.5, and it makes it illegal to smoke in a workplace, a place of employment. So I just wanted to make sure that that language that I was reading on the ordinance over there did change your definition of tobacco to cover all those things, and what you just indicated is that it does. Because we have been getting calls about the electronic products being used in grocery stores, in your theater, in some restaurants, and certainly it's been people have been pushing and trying that at work. So this will take care of that, as I'm understanding, correct?
We can't affect the state labor code,
Right.
but this makes that smoke, just like smoking everywhere, it's smoking in every place in our ordinance. It's the same thing.
And it does cover the workplace, so, as I'm understanding.
I can't say our code specifically covers the workplace. We can't affect the labor code, Laura.
Can you make something consistent with that, though, and just change the definition of tobacco?
That's what we've done.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I think there needs to be a clarification.
Yeah,
Is that what we have done is where the city has the authority to regulate smoking, and where we have done that within our code, it now includes e-cigarettes. But in those areas where we didn't have authority to regulate, where it was a state law, changing our definition in our municipal code will not affect the definition in the state law.
So is it gonna be legal for people to use e-products in the workplace in the city of Susanville?
I guess you're not hearing us.
I guess not.
We can't affect the labor code,
Right.
Laura. So if our code is making regulations about the workplace, we would be violating the supremacy clause. We can't do that. Now, something in the back of my mind tells me that we may have something in our ordinance affecting public places, and that, that may cover you, but we simply can't affect the state labor code. We can't modify the labor code, you know
Right.
that.
You can adopt policies that are consistent. I mean, you can make policies stronger than the state law. And, I mean, it is against the law for people to smoke in the workplace
We
now.
can make policies more restrictive than the
Right.
state law. I think the council should adopt this ordinance, and I think we should re-examine our code, because there are many places in the code, are there not, to talk about smoking.
Yeah, and it's related to in and around buildings, but I will need to double check, but I do not believe that our municipal code currently regulates smoking in the workplace. It does.
Yeah, our labor code 12.40 says no smoking areas and events located within the city of Susanville are designated below. Section A says workplaces pursuant to labor code section 6404.5.
Okay, so it's
So
there.
I would believe that it would then.
Why did you say that in the first place?
It took me a little while to get there. I was not texting, I was actually researching.
At least you're getting a
The
signal.
way the ordinance reads and what was written in the newspaper would lead one to believe that it was just a smoke-free uptown Halloween event and a Christmas event and parks.
And that's because we did some cleanup on the definition of the street, and that's the only reason.
Okay,
So this definition will apply to all of the areas in our code, which also include the workplace.
maybe I can just work with you to understand where all those are so that we can tell the right thing and educate properly.
On our website, you can go to the municipal code, and under chapter 12, you can call me if you need. Under chapter 12, it's listed as well, so but certainly call me. We can look into that.
This is the second.
We've already done the first.
Well,
Just want to know if I need to officially.
well, politically.
Oh, yes. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to open the public hearing. Does anybody from the public wish to address the council or staff on this item? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Back to you, Doctor.
Motion to waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance number 14-0999.
First and second, any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Hancock, item 12C.
Good evening. At our last meeting, we discussed this item, and it's related to the emergency water regulations that were adopted by the California State Water Board on July 29th of this year. As a water supplier, the city of Susanville is subject to these regulations. And we discussed at length at the last meeting that there are 4 provisions that relate specifically to residents, water users, that there are, in the regulations, there are specific acts that have been deemed to be illegal related to the wastage of water. And then specifically to a water supplier, we are required to implement stage 2 of our water shortage contingency plan. And we've included stage 2 of the plan to this agenda item, and also stage 1 and stage 3 for your reference. Now, as we discussed, this has created quite a bit of concern for us as staff, and we have been working with the state on an alternative measure because the businesses and individuals that would be affected by stage 2, implementation of stage 2, are quite severe. And when we drafted those regulations, it was anticipated that it was a significant water storage, that one of our springs went down, or some of our wells were not working. And while we are in a drought, and we are encouraging everyone to conserve water and to be prudent with their water use, we have not experienced a significant impact to our water supply at this time. And so we are continuing to work with the state on alternative measures to encourage water conservation, but they have, in our discussions with them, the penalty for water suppliers not implementing stage 2 of the water shortage contingency plan is $10,000 per day. And so what we are recommending today is that we adopt this, adopt the resolution, and I'm just checking that actually it's just a motion that we're requesting the city council make a motion to implement stage 2 of the of our water shortage contingency plan. As staff, what we will do at that point is we will send out a courtesy notice to the residents of what the requirements are, and we will work on a game plan of how we would go about implementing the other sections of phase 2 of the plan. And so we are, and we'll continue to work with the state on an alternative solution as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Any questions for Mr. Hancock from the council? Any questions from the public?
So, yeah, what does that mean for the average homeowner or the average business? What's your courtesy letter likely to look like?
Our courtesy letter will inform them of the emergency water regulations that were adopted, and there are 4 specific items in there that the state has included, and that is, if you are washing a car, you are to have the hose fitted with a nozzle that will turn off in the event that you set it on the ground. If you are landscaping your lawn, you are to do it in a way that you are not causing significant amounts of water to pool on the sidewalk and essentially run down the road. It is also, you will not be able to, unless for a health and safety reason, spray down wash out a parking lot or a driveway just for the purpose of clearing off the dust. If there's a health and safety reason, then you are permitted to do that. And the last one will come to me in a second. And the use, you may continue to use ornamental fountains, provided that they are using a recirculating pump and are not continually being filled with water and that water is being discharged. In addition to that, we will request that the residents of Susanville limit their landscape irrigation to the evening hours to, I believe, 3 days per week. And so that's what the courtesy notice will include at this time.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question. Under stage 2 and stage 3, and different amounts for each, there's a reference to the fact that all new developments for homes shall be required to install low-flow devices, for example, toilets and shower heads, and pay $300 to the city of Susanville prior to construction for purchase of water conservation retrofit kits. And if we go into stage 3, it will be $500 to the city. Can you explain to me what the retrofit kits are and why we're having to pay $300?
Yes, I can. The state has come up with guidelines of what is to be included in those retrofit kits. And so it is related to new homes being constructed during a water emergency, that they, because they are purchasing new shower heads and things like that, that they purchase shower heads that meet this standard. In addition, the retrofit kits are packages that are related to also the toilets and other orifices in the house that use water so that they are able to operate at using a lower volume of water. And the reason that we are unable to implement that at this time is because we don't have any of the kits. And so it's difficult to sell them if you don't have them. And so we are working with the state of how to obtain them and how we will address them.
So this money goes to the reimbursement to the city for the cost of purchasing those from the state?
A portion of the money goes to the actual cost of the kit, and a portion would actually just go to the city.
Couldn't we just require certain toilets and sinks be installed, shower heads be installed instead of charging $300 for a retrofit kit?
I think, I understand where you're going, and it's exactly what we're struggling with, in that our water shortage contingency plan looks like many others in the state, because they're prepared by consultants that are familiar with the state requirements. They are very boilerplate. Alice includes the same language that many of the others do, and so it's anticipated that when you identify a water shortage in your community, that you implement stage one and then you implement stage two, and it provides you time to put those pieces in place. So for the California Water Board to just unilaterally go in and require every city and every water supplier in the state of California to automatically go to stage two is a one-size-fits-all solution that doesn't fit at all. And so we, until we got this legislation and until we reviewed it, we're learning about these fees too. And so we don't have a price on how much the kits are. So I don't know if it's going to be $295 and there's going to be $5 left over to put towards water conservation efforts, or if the kits are $110 and there's $190. So these dollar amounts are boilerplate, and there really wasn't any thought given to it.
$300 or $500 is nothing on new homes, so I don't think it's gonna be great.
Well, it's just one more thing, sprinkler
Yeah.
system, do this, we got retrofit, which is probably what, a little thing that costs $3 to make. So I'm just concerned.
Once we get a kit, we can definitely share with the council what's in it.
Jim?
How many new home building permits did we have last year?
We had,
One?
I believe it was 2, and they related to fire damage.
One size fits all strikes again.
Well, last meeting we had a couple of weeks ago, Dan Newton did a great job of outlining kind of where the water supply is and how the drought, has affected the springs and the wells. And I think the point that needs to be made, and I think there needs to be a dialogue with the community. I think there's no doubt that we're in a severe drought emergency regionally, the whole western United States. They show the maps, and all of northeastern California has got the darkest color, which means it's got the most severe drought conditions in terms of the weather. And I'm sure there's a lot of vegetation and others that are stressed that are a fire hazard. Most of those maps are driven for fire concerns. It doesn't necessarily equate to what the water supplies that are there. And I think the thing that's ironic is that based on that report, that the current drought conditions of 3 years have, if had any effect or little effect on our current supply. That doesn't mean that in the future that we may find ourselves having a shortage of water. And these stages that are defined by the consultants that are being one size fit all in the state, is designed to anticipate when you have a major water break and you have to shut down the system until you can get it fixed, or whatever the case may be, like what Los Angeles had there at UCLA, where the whole campus was flooded when their system broke open. But to impose a 25% reduction, is going to have major impacts when you've got water tanks that are full. And we're not dealing with, this severe situation. And I think it was indicated, and the concern was there, you have staffing that's based upon revenue that you receive on selling 100% of the water. If you're only going to be selling 75% of the water, now you're only going to have 75% of the revenue, I guess, unless you raise the rates to offset that, which is obviously a concern. So does this mean that we're going to be laying off some of our public works staff to deal with the water system? Does it mean, down the road that we're going to be looking at rate increases? And I think the community is going to be extremely interested in that as part of it. I think small business is being affected. He talks about supermarkets and civic buildings and schools and so forth coming up with it. One of the best things that's going on in Susanville right now is the Lassen Ale Works. And what I know, talking to Eric, that one of the reasons why they located here is the location and availability of the water that comes out of the springs. And it's consistent year-round. They don't have ups and downs like a lot of communities. That's why they're here and want to be here. Does this mean that he has to use 25% less water, which means making 25% less beer as an imposing this kind of a standard? And believe me, I think the beer lovers in town are going to be pretty upset if they're told that. So I think the ramifications of these conditions being imposed administratively, not because of the existence of water or lack of the water that would be available under a real emergency, I think is something that the council needs to confront, and I think the community is going to be watching very closely, because I think all the options that we're listening to Jared lay out, to me, honestly, I think are unacceptable. To impose those kind of conditions when our water tanks are full. Now, if the tanks are half full, or a quarter full, or 3/4 full, trigger these conditions, people, I think, will accept it. But I think to do that with a water system that is functioning just fine, despite the drought, I think is not going to fly.
Well, I have to, you know, the point that's brought up, and there was a good discussion, and by our Public Works Director who is coordinating this. For those that don't know, the city primarily relies on 2 springs for our water supply, which are sufficient for the community's needs through most of the year. And it is only in the warmer summer months when we supplement that supply with groundwater wells that we have located through the city. And the point that's being made is the frustration that we are dealing with, because in fact, as of today, all of our wells are off, and the springs are sufficient to cover the demands, and the tank is overflowing. And we are sending water back down to the river. And but we're also faced with a situation where the state has adopted a $10,000 a day fine specifically for non-compliance of adopting stage 2 of your plan. And that's real. That has a significant ability to affect our customers and our budget. And so we're trying to balance that out and to do right by the community, and also not put the city in jeopardy.
Mr. Mayor, given the fact that the tanks are full and that the excess that the springs are developing, the fact we're not using the wells in August is relatively significant. You know, I think, have we appealed to the water board directly to say we appreciate the significance of the state situation, but to impose at 25% and maybe possibly if they go to a stage three, a 40% across the board, when you have tanks that are full that are letting water, you know, go over the top, you know, I think is something that they need to address that. And I think, you know, using our legislative representatives, Senator Gaines and Assemblyman Dolly, to intercede and appeal to those bodies in Sacramento would be to our advantage. But I think this is, you know, just classic government going bad. And we should stand up against it.
In the last 4 years, we have imposed water restrictions and have very little negative impact from the community. We had a high break with Katie, and we imposed water restrictions
And the community responded.
not as heavily as I think you're anticipating. And the tanks are full right now, but very close to us, water's drying up. Bogart doesn't have water, the fire department up there doesn't have water, the rest area doesn't have water. You see driving around just in our own little 10-mile radius, you see a lot of wells being dug deeper right now.
Just down on Richmond Road.
Yeah, so it's a bigger issue for down south and other areas that don't have water. We do have water, but I don't see that imposing some things, we don't have to hammer down on everyone that violates it, but I think there's not gonna be huge.
Well, I tell you, Councilman McBride, I agree with you. Bogart is dried up, and there are issues out in the valley even that are there. And I think in those particular cases, these are the kind of regulations that are designed to deal with those impacts. When our tanks start dropping below being full, and we are seeing a degrading of the water supply coming in, these are real, and we have to deal with that. But to impose these before that even happens, I think is I think that's why people have the opinion they have about government, and I think that's what we need to be able to articulate to the folks in Sacramento. To sit there and say, well, we're doing it because they're making us do it, I think is not something that serves our community's interest well.
Even we